Welcome to the Building Materials Sales and Marketing Podcast, presented by Mark Mitchell, a sales and marketing consultant who specializes in helping building materials companies overcome difficult sales problems. Mark is the author of the book Building Materials Channel Marketing and a frequent speaker at industry events.
Hello, this is Mark Mitchell from Wizard Strategy. Today I want to talk to you about trends in business management that come and go over time, and one that I recently rediscovered that I find it's wise for us all to think about. And when I say trends in business, I think about, you'll hear terms like lean thinking, Six Sigma, execution, or just about anything Jim Collins has written, all of a sudden becomes the latest bright, shiny object of how you should manage a business. And you'll hear people including this in presentations. Whether they're internal meetings in conference rooms to sound intelligent or smart, you start using this term. You incorporated it into all of your planning. And then over time, we move on to the next new great idea. And while every one of these has some lesson to be learned that can make your business better, what happens as we move on to the next one is we ignore or forget the lessons that we learned from the first one. An example of this is when you move from, let's say, one trend or idea which is based on the best way to grow your business is by improving customer service. And then you move on 2 years later to one that's all about reducing waste and inefficiency. It's amazing how the effect isn't cumulative. It isn't like we start with better customer service, we raise the level of service, and then we move on to improving operational efficiency, reducing waste and inefficiency. And when we make that change, we frequently literally ignore or walk away from what we learned about the value of customer service and the investment we made to improve it. It's almost like there's a mindset of, customer service, yeah, we do a good job of that. But what really happens is over time, your customer service starts to drop off. So you've lost all of that you gained by adopting what this brilliant new author has taught us all. The idea or concept or advice, trend, whatever you want to call it, that I recently came back across is one called system thinking. And system thinking first became in vogue back in 2008 when there was a book written about system thinking. And I recently read a blog post by a man, and forgive me if I get his name right, but it's Taken Tank is this man's name. And he's the founder of a company called Jotform. And he recently wrote a blog article that I came across that just really, really hit me. And he started out by talking about just an old parable from India that 4 blind men came across an elephant in the forest, and they had never experienced the massive creature before. And so slowly each of the blind men reached out and touched a different part of the elephant. The first man that touched the long trunk said, "It's a snake." And the second man that touched one of an elephant's large muscular legs said, no, it's a column. The third man, who happened to, as the elephant let out a large cry, the third man said, "It's piercing like a trumpet." And finally, the fourth man, when the elephant began to move, the fourth man froze on the ground. As the ground shook, he said, "It's an earthquake." So there were 4 men standing side by side, all trying to figure out what this large object was that they had encountered. And all with a totally, none of them wrong, but all of them with a totally separate view. What that all sums up to is how we often think of our own partial experience represents the the full truth, even though other people have different experiences and truths. It reminded me of how frequently a building material company will come to me with a problem that literally is one person or one department's view of the problem. One way they define the problem and one reason they believe what is causing the problem. And inevitably, when I start working with the company, I quickly, because I'm coming in from the outside, and if you will, I quickly see that this is not a large snake. There is something there that looks like and feels like a large snake, but when you look at the whole, which being from the outside, I have an easier ability to see the whole, you quickly see that it's not really a snake. It is merely an important part of an overall system or whole that is causing the problem. When you look at it from the system or whole part, you see a better solution, more effective solution than if you try to solve the problem by just viewing it as a snake. And so we think about that everything is a system, the way your company operates. It's not only how you produce the product, how your credit department works, how your sales department, customer service, shipping, marketing, they all are, if you will, an elephant. But yet companies continue to look at one part of an elephant. Perhaps they have a view that it's an elephant, and perhaps the elephant has come up lame, and they immediately think that the problem is in the leg. And while it may very well be, I find many times there's something that is outside of the leg that is the root cause of why the elephant or building material company is limping. And rather than just applying a Band-Aid, if you will, to the problem, it's much better to get down to the root cause. And so when you can step back and see it, you are much more effective. When you look at system thinking, when you look at it that way, you are going to get to the root cause, and you're going to have a much more effective solution that is much more sustainable, is going to fix the problem sooner and at a lower cost. Now, so there's the issue of how the components of a company see each of themselves. And within there, everyone will say, yes, we acknowledge there's a problem here. And yes, we want to change. And then the problem gets to be, as long as the change does not affect them. It's, of course, some other department or some other person's problem why they're having this problem. It has nothing to do with my job or my department or my responsibility. And so there's a natural tendency to, once again, if you will, try to herd the solution, the thinking of solution into a specific area. And the other big problem is that when you're not applying system thinking, you are, for the most part, ignoring the customer, who is maybe the most important part of fixing an issue, if you will. And the issues I deal with have to do with growing sales, gaining customers, or maintaining customers. And it's amazing how people don't take into account, how does the customer view you and your competition? And within there is also a very, very valuable piece of information that enables you to develop the right solution. Too many building material companies don't take into account or research enough what the customer is thinking. What's going on in the world of the customer? The company makes assumptions about what the customer wants, what the customer likes, what will make them happy, why they are or not doing something. And they are almost always incorrect because they don't go out and look and talk at customers from an unbiased standpoint to really get to the bottom of where the customer is. So you're missing a huge piece of your ability to solve a problem effectively by ignoring the customer. So to apply system thinking, you want to understand and leverage all of the feedback points. And so certainly a customer is a powerful feedback point. It's also amazing with inside a company how somebody like a truck driver that is out on a job site or at a distributor's, the feedback, the off-the-cuff comments he's hearing out there are not taken into account, or if that person's mentioned something, they are dismissed and not taken seriously. The same goes many times I find with customer service. Those people on the front line of every day, if you will, talking to customers on the phone, on email, however they do it, but they are getting amazingly valuable feedback and comments that once again tend to be dismissed or ignored. And the final area is the salespeople who are out there in the field. When they start to hear feedback about our lead times are taking too long, how we mismanaged our most recent price increase, how they are noticing a drop-off in our quality. All of those comments, once again, or that valuable information and feedback point tends to be cut off, not taken seriously. And in many cases, the salesperson is made to feel like we really don't need to hear that. Okay? So please just go do your job. Don't worry about things like that. That's up to us. The next part, in order to apply system thinking correctly, is to look for patterns and trends. You're always going to find an outlier where there was a problem with a shipment. There could be a problem with a lead time. There could be even a quality problem on a particular project, which maybe was in the end the fault of the installer, but yet because it involved your product, you're linked to it. Certainly you're going to always have outliers, but you want to be always looking for when these things are starting to happen more frequently. And the earlier you can catch this and identify, is there a problem here, the better. One of the things that I like about Procter & Gamble is on every one of their packages, you will find an 800 number that you can call in and leave a comment, good or bad. And I don't know if they do this today, but it's my understanding that senior managers are literally given recorded files of random comments every week, like a podcast, to just listen to when they're driving to work or whenever they want to listen to it. But they're just hearing random people talk about Tide, talk about Crest, talk about whatever. And they're looking for, what are people saying? Is that a problem? Is this something about the cap that goes on toothpaste? How often are we hearing about this? Should we look into this? I've wondered about this. And so it's finding different ways to identify those patterns and trends. And they will start out as something that literally you identify that way. They don't start out by doing some market research and spending tens of thousands of dollars to see, did we go from 3.2% of people don't like the way we package our product to 4.4%. That's a very inefficient and expensive way to find this information out. You have people within your organization who are aware of these things in live time as they are happening, as they are beginning to build early on. But yet, most of the time, those people do not have a way to share that information. People say, oh, well, just come tell us. Of course, we want to hear it. But that's really not the case within most organizations. The next way to look at system thinking is to kind of start to also say, is this a people problem or a system problem? Because many times you can have great people, but the system's the problem. And of course, there will be times when you have a good system and you have a people problem. And it could be just an individual's just not the right person, or it can also be you had a great system, but your people have not been taught adequately about how to best use the system. So this idea when trying to solve a problem that is slowing down your sales or some other problem is to make sure you're looking at what's your system and what's your people problem. One that I see frequently today is people that have companies who have invested in Salesforce as a CRM, thinking that it is a magic bullet that will immediately increase their sales because they have Salesforce. And it usually, initially for most companies, is a mistake to do that, because it's not because Salesforce isn't an amazing system, but it's because the transition to get their people on board with Salesforce to use it and to use it correctly, that's where they fall down. So they just still have a Rolodex that now costs them a lot of money each month. And rather than the time their salespeople invest in Salesforce having a benefit to the company, as well as the salespeople saying, how did I live without Salesforce? It just always lags behind. And, another one that is tough for people when we're overstaffed and underworked is the fact that, people are focused on how do I keep doing my current job today better and better. And then there are outside changes that are my challenges. And so it's very difficult to find the time to continue to learn, to never stop learning, and to be looking for ideas that will improve your company before they become a problem, and then you're looking for the solution. Another key part of system thinking. And the other one is to do this as a group, because we all have our own biases from our experience about what has worked and what hasn't, and assumptions. And if it's just one person internally going down this path, their assumptions and biases are going to weigh very heavily in the direction the company goes to solve the problem. Where if there's an open-ended forum or a team of people constantly talking about this, and they're all confident enough in themselves and their positions that they can be, I don't know what, I'll say criticized, there's probably a better word, but the shipping person can ask a question about sales, which may come off that they are attacking sales, if you can keep from viewing it that way. So the conversations can be totally wide open. That's another great way to apply system thinking. The next part of effectively applying system thinking is to have a shared vision for the company and what you are trying to do. I also can walk through many companies that I deal with, and as I will go from department to department, person to person, and I'm looking for that bright, shining North Star of that company that everybody can look and say, when faced with an opportunity or a problem, I have to look and say, will my solution help the company on its quest toward the North Star? That they too frequently are not aware of what is that North Star, so they do their best to move the company forward in the direction they think it should be, which may not be, is usually not the same direction that the other employees of the company think it should be. And they don't know any better, so they just try their best. And so, back to this idea about rather than saying, we're having a problem with sales, we're having a problem with entering a new market, we're questioning the return we're getting on our marketing budget, we're losing sales to competitors, where customers are leaving us, that rather than whatever the issue is, but rather than looking this as a little thing like the trunk of the elephant, the more you can apply system thinking and step back from the whole situation and involve not only your internal people across the board, but also take into account where your customer's head is and how they're seeing the elephant. And you then are much more likely to more quickly arrive at a solution that is much more likely to work quicker, and to work at a lower cost. So I was really glad when I came across this article, this blog post about system thinking, because it took me back to when I'd first heard about system thinking. It was all in vogue and all the rage, and everything we did for clients in which they wanted to do was system thinking. Everybody used that term. But since 2008, it's amazing how we've forgotten whatever lesson we learned about system thinking, and we've moved on to other equally important and valuable ways of improving your business. But we've moved on to the next bright, shiny object and not retained the lessons we learned before. And I think system thinking is one of the most forgotten concepts that I see today when I'm working with building material companies. So I hope this idea of thinking about things from a system will help you more effectively solve your problems. I also hope if you think that your company could benefit from an outside expert to help you solve those problems, please contact me. Until our next episode, I hope that you found this to be of value. Mark Mitchell from Wizard Strategy.
Thank you for listening to this podcast from Mark Mitchell on building materials, sales, and marketing. We hope he gave you some fresh perspectives on how to grow your sales, and will listen to future episodes.